So I was supposed to be up here with my good friend Meredith Bronk. Some of you know, many of you know, Meredith is the CEO at OST. Meredith also has COVID, which she realized yesterday. So let me maybe start with good morning. I know many of you. For those of you who I haven't had the privilege to meet, my name is Nate Koetje, and I have really two things to cover with you this morning. The first one is to introduce you to the West Michigan CEO Council. You've heard it referenced a few times. I want to give you a sense for what that's all about. The second one is I want to talk to you about or engage you in a discussion, perhaps an initiative, we might think of it as, around something that we believe could be transformative to the West Michigan economy. So first, the CEO Council. West Michigan has a long history of business leaders who see themselves as community leaders. You see evidence all around you. There's evidence of that in this room. You see evidence of that in our city's infrastructure. This is something unique about West Michigan. Our business leaders regularly play the role of community leader. Following this example, this group is made up of business CEOs, business leaders, who see business as a force for good. A force for good in the world, and a force for good here in West Michigan. This group is working hard to build an inclusive, entrepreneurial, and sustainable economic environment here in West Michigan. To raise West Michigan up as an example for the world. A bold vision, sure. Easy for a CEO to stand on a stage, right, and say things like, let's raise West Michigan up as an example for the world. And we get fired up, and then we walk away, and we wonder, what's to come of that? Much of the work of the CEO Council might fit nicely under the mantra of think big and act small. This group of folks is committed to first starting with themselves, listening and learning. Then, thinking about their own organizations. What change could I make or impact could I have within my own scope of control, if you will? And lastly, if we're successful in those things, we can begin to think about community transformation. So, when we think about this group, there's a lot of maybe power or influence in a group of CEOs, but we acknowledge it's not enough. We need more. We need you. So you might be wondering what's coming next, right? Perhaps there's envelopes on your table where I'm going to ask you to make a donation today to share Grand Rapids for the world. I see some of you looking. There, in fact, are not envelopes on your table, right? Or maybe you're anticipating that I'm going to have you sign a petition that says, let's bring Grand Rapids to the world. Even better, maybe you'll be the honorary chair of a fundraising dinner. Or, this was my personal preference, but it didn't make it through the edits. I'm going to have you stand, put your hands in the center of your table, and join me in a Create Great chant. That is sure to inspire all of us to get out and do something significant. So I'm not going to ask you to do any of those things. Not because I don't think they're a good idea, but because those around me didn't think they were a good idea. What I am going to ask you for is something else. But first, let me talk to you about kind of where we are. I want to bring you up to speed to our thinking. So some of you know this guy, and some of you don't. Right? For many of us, Dr. Paul Isley is a familiar face. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Isley a minute. So Dr. Isley is the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs at the Seidman College of Business at Grand Valley State. He holds a PhD in economics from Purdue. He holds a master's in economics from Purdue. He holds a bachelor's in physics and economics from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. I share all of that with you just to lend a little bit of street credibility to this cat is super smart. Right? That's the takeaway. He's a trusted expert on the West Michigan economy. So when collectively we wonder, like, what's happening in our region? This is the guy. This is the guy. He knows what he's talking about. As a CEO council, we had the chance to spend some time with him. So imagine round table with a super smart guy and working towards trying to figure out, like, what's next? What do we need to be thinking about? What are the forces that are likely to impact our collective and shared future? Let me share with you what we learned. So in spite of the concerns that we're all hearing about the current economic state, over the next 10 years, so you might think over the long run for many of us, job demand is going to go up. The supply of the working population is going to go down. In order for us to have a vibrant, growing economy, we're dependent on a growing population. Now, there are a few of you, perhaps that are economists in the room. I don't want to argue with you about this. I'm not an economist. Or maybe, like many of the folks I work with, you have an engineering mind. And right now you want to say, well, there's other ways to grow an economy. That's probably true. But the easiest, the fastest track is a growing population leads us to a growing economy. So when these factors happen, job demand goes up, the supply of the working population goes down, we inevitably find ourselves in a condition of constrained growth. So I don't want to overdo this economic lesson, but for those of you that are looking at your phones right now or thinking, that's an economic lesson, I'm just going to repeat it. Job demand goes up, supply of working population goes down, constrained growth. Not impossible growth, but constrained growth. This can lead us down a path of, like, what could I possibly do with this? Like, what am I going to do about growing the population of West Michigan? Well, I've got some good news for you. Dr. Isley shared with us, and I'm now going to share with you, 3 potential solutions. Solution number 1. You're going to want to jot this down. Increase birth rates. Right, the problem with this solution, like, this is viable, but the problem with this solution is it's an 18-year lead time. And I can't speak for this room. I know many of you, but not all of you. But when we got the CEO council together and we said, who's in? A whole bunch of people were not in. They were either unwilling or unable to be part of this solution. If this is how you choose to contribute, you don't have to don't raise your hand, sir. You don't have to raise your hand, right? We'll just know that this was your contribution to solving this problem that is sure to impact all of us. So that's one potential solution. Potential solution number 2, automation. So a resounding yes should come related to solution number 2. And there are many of you in this room that are aggressively moving this forward. This is a viable option. It reduces the demand for jobs. It solves a problem, but it's not going to solve it by itself. Many of us have learned that. The third solution, or potential solution, and the one that I specifically want to talk to you about today, is to grow the working age population of folks that are here in West Michigan, working to attract people here in West Michigan. Now, we see 2 viable paths for how this might go forward. One, we could target the populations of other states. Sometimes, actually, we've done this. There are organizations that have successfully done this, whether it be through job creation or otherwise. We could work to convince them that our beer is better, our lakes are clearer, and their future would be brighter if they chose to pack up and lay down roots here in West Michigan. All of this is likely true. And as much as I want to kick off an initiative to recruit the good people of Indiana to West Michigan, I'm not sure it's the best option. The second path, the second option that we collectively believe as business leaders in this community will lead to more sustainable success. That is focusing on attracting new Americans to our region. So I feel your half-hearted applause. Half the group is like, yes. And it's about time someone said it. Your arms are crossed right now. You're feeling energized. The other half is like, Lord, please tell me he's not going to stand up there and talk about immigration policy, border control. Good news for everybody, I'm not that brave. We will not be talking about immigration policy or border control. I want to talk to you about something much less controversial than that. I want to chat with you this morning about the cultural fabric of our community. And I want us to recognize that in order for us to experience the growth we desire, we have to be intentional about being a community that welcomes, supports, and values new Americans. Our shared success in this room and outside of this room will come by increasing the number of new Americans that call West Michigan home, by increasing the participation of new Americans in the West Michigan workforce, and by increasing entrepreneurism amongst new Americans. Let me add a little bit more here. So when we talk about new Americans, what are we talking about? I'm going to attempt to add a little bit of clarity. So when we as a CEO council talk about new Americans, we're talking about first and second generation new Americans. Probably some of you in this room, if I had to guess. We're talking about agricultural workers, construction workers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, service workers. Whatever stereotype jumped in your head when I said new Americans, so I'm going to pause. So I want you to think about what jumped in your head. And then I want to challenge you with you're probably wrong. You can't paint this collective group of people with a broad brush. So how about when we talk about transformation? What specifically needs to get transformed? Well, for this, we turn to the Kent County Welcome Plan. This work has already been done. I wish the CEO Council could take credit for this work. We can't. We stepped into this work. It already existed. The Kent County Welcome Plan was assembled in 2019 by a task force of local chambers of commerce, not just this one that's hosting this event, but throughout West Michigan, and local businesses. Chambers of commerce and businesses developed this plan. This plan lays out essentially 5 areas that, if addressed successfully, will ensure that we end up with a community that's welcoming to new Americans. These areas are community engagement, educational outcomes, safety, access to services, and maximizing economic impact. There are many, many people in our community that are doing work in these areas. We're not kicking anything off. These things are in motion. Where we think we as business leaders can have the biggest impact is on that last one, maximizing economic impact. In order to maximize the economic impact of new Americans, we need to increase the number of new Americans that call West Michigan home. We need to increase the participation of new Americans in the workforce. And we need to increase entrepreneurism amongst new Americans. So this is where you come in. So I actually heard the sigh when you saw table discussion. I know you didn't arrive here this morning thinking, I hope I can be vulnerable with the folks at my table. I hope that I get a chance to really talk about how I feel about what Nate's saying. I recognize that and want to challenge you that we want this to be something different. Not a talking head, but a collection of folks that say, we're willing to be vulnerable. We're willing to lean into this. We understand how important this is to our community. We collectively need to be bold in both our thinking and our doing around this area. We need to be willing to put a stake in the ground that says West Michigan will be a community that is welcoming to new Americans, and then each of us being willing to do our part, no matter how big or small, to make that a reality. So I wonder how many people are in this room. And so I don't know. I'm going to guess, give or take, 500. We need to harness the collective brain power of each of you in order to start a conversation. A conversation about what we can do to ensure that West Michigan is a community that's welcoming to new Americans. So here's how we're going to do it. On your table is a pad of paper. It looks like this. Reach for that pad of paper very slowly. I'm waiting. Reach for the pad of paper, please. Everybody has this pad of paper. There also is a pen in case you didn't bring one today. On this pad of paper, you are going to capture some of your ideas. There's a few folks from our organization, Feyen, Zylstra, in the audience. They are also sighing and groaning right now because they've done this. So we're going to do an activity called brain writing. And brain writing gives you a chance to capture a few bullet point ideas before you share them at your table. So how this is going to work is at your table, you're going to jot down 3 ways, 3 ideas that you have that might move us forward in this. The question is, how can we help ensure West Michigan will be welcoming for new Americans? Some of you are big thinkers. Some of you are going to think about casting vision in a macro sense. Some of you are small thinkers. You're going to think about something you specifically can do. You're going to write those down without speaking. After about probably 5 minutes, I'll pay attention as to when it appears like everybody's done. Then you're going to share them at your table. Here's how the table sharing goes. Think bullet points, not essays. So you're going to go around. Each person shares one idea. We don't debate the idea. Right? We don't sell our idea. Everybody shares one. Then we go around again. My experience has been after we go around twice, we're going to have some repeats. Then, as time allows, there can be some discussion at your table. What we want, what we need as a takeaway from this is those sheets of paper are going to go in the center of your table, and we're going to gather them and capture them. So let's imagine there are 500 people in this room, and each of you are going to jot down 3 ideas, some big, some small. 1,500 ways that we might be able to ensure that West Michigan is welcoming to new Americans. Now, before I turn you loose, I want to throw a caution out there. So, if statistics apply to this room, half of you are extroverts. The extroverts right now are actually thinking, now's my chance. I've got the right idea, and I can't wait to educate these fools at my table about the right one. So if that's you, I want you to think, maybe I should listen first. And now there's the other half of you, the introverts. The introverts at your table are actually looking at you extroverts thinking, thank God you're here so I don't have to speak. Right? So if you're an introvert, I want to challenge you with maybe I should speak first. Remember, this isn't a debate. It's a discussion. We're sharing ideas. So I'm going to throw roughly 5 minutes on the clock that's in front of me. I'm going to have you go heads down, jot down 3 to 5 ideas. When it appears like most of us have, then I'm going to call you back for some group work. I know you've been seated for a while, so as soon as I put this 5 minutes, 25% of you are going to be tempted to get up and go use the restroom. Those laughing, we're about to get up and use the restroom. I'm going to ask you to hold out, right? We'll come into a break, but don't miss this piece. So 5 minutes, heads down, and then I'll prompt you to talk about it at your table. Thank you. So, as the facilitator, you read the audience based on the level of conversation. So your ideas have been written down. Some of you have already shifted, which is awesome, into some discussion around those. I'm going to move everybody there right now. So the process again, so the extroverts don't dominate and the introverts don't just sit, is bullet points around your table. All right, so somebody have the courage just to go first, probably an extrovert. Go first, and we'll bullet point around. And then there will be some time for discussion. But I want to make sure everybody at your table has an opportunity to share at least one, if not two, ideas. So go ahead and talk about it and share around your table. I hate to cut off great conversation. Let me bring you back. So the first thing that I want to do as we wrap up this portion, mainly so I don't forget, is tear off that sheet of paper and make a pile in the center of your table. You don't need to put your name on it. So it would be impossible for me, in taking a 3-minute lap around and attempting to eavesdrop on you as if I'm your middle school teacher, to summarize what I heard. But I want to give you some sense for maybe this was your table or someone else's, but there's this sense of what I might think about as tension. I don't mean tension like disagreement. I mean tension like what to do. I want to encourage you and encourage us not to get stuck in that tension. So I'll give you an example of that tension. Some of you might think, or even articulated, I need more data before I can act in any way. I need more research to tell me that this is the right path. Others of you are thinking, any data is too much data, let's go. Both of you are probably right. The challenge that I would lay out in front of us is not to let that tension get us stuck. That tension can be paralyzing. So some of you think big picture, cast vision. Some of you think, we can't cast vision until it's real. Both of those have some element of truth to them. So you might think micro action, what can I do? I might think macro action, what can we all do? All of that is true. In engaging in, I get stuck and I can't move forward because I need this stuff, is paralyzing. Not just to this discussion, but can be paralyzing for all of us in all of our discussions. So you might think, we need to listen more. We need to talk more. We need to read more. We need to act more. We need to be bolder. We need to be less aggressive. We need to be more aggressive. All of these things reside inside you. And there's an element of truth to all of it. So let me close in this way. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for being willing to share your ideas. Thank you for being willing to show up at a CO summit where you thought you were going to get to sit back and just listen and absorb and instead be vulnerable at your table, to engage in some discussion that you probably weren't anticipating engaging in, for not leaving to go to the bathroom during the group work. Thank you for all of that. Remember that this is the start of a conversation. The challenge for some of you will be, what's going to come of that stuff Nate said? I wonder what they are going to do with that. Here's my challenge back to you. They aren't going to do anything. We are going to do something. And the only way we do something is if you do something. I don't know what that is. It might be, if you do nothing else, to read that Kent County Welcome Plan. There's a QR code on your name tag. That plan is there. You don't have to agree with it. Just read it. You might then think, what about in my organization? I wonder if I could do something that would help ensure West Michigan will be more welcoming to new Americans. Eventually, that leads to community transformation. But for each of us, the action that we take out of this starts with us, then others, then our community as a whole. Thank you for your time. Thank you for engaging in this important discussion.